All right, students, so who can tell us what the picture is on the screen? Hopefully the students will be able to recognize that it is the American flag. Does anyone know what the American flag represents? The flag represents our nation and how we are free from the British. The students may be able to identify this, but you may need to guide them. This is one of our nation's symbols. A symbol is an image or icon that represents an idea or an object. Some examples include the American flag, which we just talked about. A rose can represent love. The color black can represent death. That is why during funerals we are asked to wear black. And sports teams have different symbols as well. For example, the Green Bay Packers has a big G, which is shown on the screen. Today, we are going to be focusing on what animals can symbolize. Most of the time, animals are shown to have a positive characteristic, such as wisdom, beauty, grace, strength, loyalty, and so much more. Many schools, including ours, use an animal as their mascot. This activity is called Wildlife Symbols. The purpose of the activity is to teach students why animals are used as symbols. Some objectives include students will be able to identify values that wildlife represent. They will propose and explain why wildlife are used in symbols. And they will explore and analyze the use of wildlife symbols in a variety of content. This activity is for 4th graders. The subject areas include science, because it is about wildlife, English language arts, because they are asked to do research, and social studies, because they discuss about different state and country currencies, stamps, flags, coats of arms, and just so on. This activity will take 2 days. To start off the first day, you will want to have a discussion about school mascots. Can someone tell us why schools have mascots? The main reason why schools have mascots is just to represent their school. Can someone tell us why they use animals to symbolize their school? Or what the animals can symbolize? They can represent school spirit, and sometimes they have a positive characteristic that is important to that school. Now let's come up with a definition for the word symbol. Symbol is commonly defined as something that represents or stands for something else. I want you to turn to the person next to you and brainstorm a list of local schools or colleges that use wildlife as their mascot. I would also like for you to discuss why they use wildlife and what it could possibly symbolize. You should give students about 3 to 5 minutes to talk to the person next to them. After the time is up, you will want to come together as a group and have a large group discussion. Hopefully they came up with different schools and colleges so that there's a variety. Okay, students, so not only do schools use animals to represent their school, but animals are used on flags, currencies, stamps, and even coats of arms. Let's take a look at some images. Who can tell us what the first image is and what they notice? The first image is a quarter, and there's a bald eagle on the back of it. Many wildlife is featured on many coins issued through the United States quarter program. Turn to the person next to you and talk about why states may choose wildlife to be on their quarter. After about 3 minutes, you will want to ask them to share with the class. Hopefully, they will say something about how our state chose the bald eagle because the bald eagle represents freedom, strength, victory, and whatever they can come up with. Okay, so who can tell me what the next picture is and what they notice? The next picture is a stamp and there's a tiger on it. Wildlife is often used on stamps to raise awareness to threatened and endangered species. They can even use money from that stamp to go towards wildlife conservation. This stamp, as we stated before, has a tiger on it, but this is an Amur tiger and it is endangered. This stamp has the words, the U.S. Saved Vanishing Species stamp. And it represents endangered species, and the stamp allows to raise awareness and raise money for the international species conservation. Now, students, I want you to get out a piece of paper and write a hypothesis on why you think wildlife is used in symbols. You should give them a few minutes to think about this, and you can even ask a few students to share with the class. One example would be that wildlife is used in symbols to show certain traits. For example, a school's mascot may be a beaver to represent that they are hard workers. Okay, students, so now I want you to get into groups of 3 to 4. If you want, you can choose these groups ahead of time, but sometimes it is more enjoyable for the students to work with their peers. Your group will be assigned one of the following: state or country crest or coats of arms, state or country flags, state quarters or other currencies, or stamps. It will be a good idea to assign the groups one of the topics so that each is covered. Okay, so now that you know your topic, let's go over the directions. You will be researching to find what you were assigned, but it must have an animal on it. For example, if you have state or country flags, you will want to look for a flag that has an animal on it. Once your group has found an item that you all agree on, you must answer the following questions. What are the characteristics of the animal? What value does the animal symbolize? Is the animal native, non-native, or non-existing in that region? And is that animal abundant, threatened, or endangered where it exists? It would be a good idea to write these questions on the board or somewhere where the students can see them, just in case if they forget. You should also encourage the students to have one group member focus on one of the questions so that it is just easier to get done. And since it is the end of the first day, you should allow them the rest of the time to decide what they want to do and who does what. Okay, students, so today you will have 10 minutes to finish up your research. Once the 10 minutes is almost done, you will want to hand out a poster board to each group. All right, students, so I handed out a poster board to each group. You will have 15 minutes to create a visual of your topic, and you must include the questions and answers that you researched. Here is an example of what this would look like. I just did it on a piece of paper and on a Word document. So the students would have a poster board that they would create this on, and they would be encouraged to write everything out, but they can use pictures from the internet if they would like. So I did mine on the United States quarter because there is a bald eagle on the back of it. The characteristics of a bald eagle include strength, loyalty, and fierce. The bald eagles can symbolize strength and freedom. They are native in the United States, and they have been on the endangered list before, but they are currently not. Once the 15 minutes is up, you should have the students share their posters with the class. Each member should present the information that they found, and that is just because it makes sure that each student is participating. So now that we have all presented our posters, I want you to think about the hypothesis that you all made the other day. If you forgot what it was about, it is basically that why you think wildlife is used in symbols. Do you think this activity changes or supports your hypothesis? If you want, you could have the students write it down on a piece of paper and hand it in. They could share with their small group, or you can even have them share with the entire class. It just depends on how much time you have left for that day, since this is the end of day 2. There are many different modifications that you can do for this activity for the different learning styles, but here are a few. For visual learners, you could have pictures of all the examples, and also you should have the information written out. So for example, if you have a picture of a bald eagle on your PowerPoint, on the bottom of the picture, you should write out a bald eagle. You can have the effects to make it pop up after you discuss it. For auditory learners, you should have the students talk to the person next to them, or even in small groups before having them share with the entire group. This just gets them thinking about more ideas, and then they'll be ready to share with the entire group. I think that this activity is really good for kinesthetic and tactile learners because they are asked to do research and create a poster, so it is a hands-on activity. If you were to do this activity with younger students, instead of having them talk a lot about state and country stuff, you could go into more details about the positive characteristics that animals symbolize. And then instead of having them do research and create a poster, you can have them create a family crest that incorporates an animal. And then after creating it, they should share with a small group of kids or the entire class and explain why they chose that animal and what it symbolizes. Some extensions include having the students create a world map that shows countries that use wildlife in their crest or flag, and then they'll be able to see the entire thing, and they can identify, if that animal is in that area or not. You could also have them create their own symbol using an animal. As I said before, with the younger kids, you could do this, but with the older kids, you could also do this and have them maybe explain why by writing it out or just sharing it with the group. And finally, you could go on a field trip to a zoo or wildlife center to observe the positive characteristics of different animals.